the day Lillian Morrison arrived in Yerington, Nevada, with nothing but a worn carpet bag and a teaching certificate from a Philadelphia academy. She didn't expect to find her future waiting at the end of a dusty cattle trail. It was early spring in 1878, and the high desert air still carried the bite of winter mornings, even as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the rough wooden buildings lining Main Street. Fletcher Zane stood outside the general store, his weathered face set in hard lines as he watched the afternoon stage pull in. He was 32 years old, tall and lean from years of ranch work, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and gray eyes that held both determination and a deep sadness. His wife Sarah had died bringing their third son into the world 2 years ago, and since then, the ranch had become both his refuge and his prison. The boys were growing wild as tumbleweeds, and he knew it. At 8, 10, and 12, they needed more than he could give them alone. Lillian stepped down from the stage, her green traveling dress dusty from the journey. She was 24, with auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a modest hat, and brown eyes that took in everything with an intelligence that made some men uncomfortable. Back east, she had been told repeatedly that she was too independent, too educated, too unmarriageable for a woman of her station. Teaching had been her escape, her chance at independence. This position, so far from everything she knew, had seemed like an answer to prayers she hadn't quite formed. "Miss Morrison," Fletcher approached, removing his hat. His hands, she noticed, were calloused and strong, the hands of a man who worked hard for everything he had. "Mr. Zane." She extended her hand and he shook it briefly, surprised by the firmness of her grip. "The boys are at the ranch. It's about an hour's ride. I've got a wagon waiting." His voice was gruff, unused to conversation that didn't involve cattle or weather. "That's fine. I'm accustomed to travel." She lifted her bag, but he took it from her before she could protest. The ride out to the ranch was mostly silent, though Lillian found herself stealing glances at the man beside her. There was something compelling about the set of his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the horizon, as if reading a story written in sagebrush and stone. The land itself was beautiful in a stark way, so different from the green hills of Pennsylvania where she'd grown up. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing, while closer at hand, the valley spread wide with spring grass just beginning to show green among the brown. "The boys," Fletcher finally said, breaking the silence. "They're good kids, but they've been without a woman's influence for a while now. My mother tried to help after Sarah passed, but she's getting on in years and the ranch is too isolated for her. They need proper schooling, proper manners. They need what I can't give them." There was pain in his voice, carefully controlled but unmistakable. Lillian felt something soften in her chest. "I'll do my best by them, Mr. Zane. That's all I can promise." "That's more than we've had." He glanced at her. "And you can call me Fletcher. We don't stand much on formality out here." "Then you should call me Lillian, at least when the boys aren't around. I imagine they should maintain some decorum with their teacher." The ghost of a smile crossed his face, the first she'd seen. "Yes, madam." The ranch, when it came into view, was more substantial than she'd expected. A large 2-story house, built of wood and stone, stood at the center of several outbuildings. Corrals held horses and cattle, and she could see men working in the distance. This was a working ranch, prosperous enough to hire help, to afford a teacher for the children. 3 boys came tumbling out of the house as the wagon pulled up, followed by an older woman with silver hair and a kind face. "Boys, let the lady catch her breath." The woman called, but her tone was affectionate. "That's my mother, Eleanor," Fletcher said. "She's been staying to help with the transition." The boys ranged in front of the wagon, curiosity bright in their faces. The oldest, Thomas, had his father's gray eyes and serious demeanor. The middle boy, James, was stockier, with a gap-toothed grin. And the youngest, little Benjamin, barely reached his brother's shoulders, with dark curls and enormous brown eyes that studied her solemnly. "Boys, this is Miss Morrison. She's come all the way from Philadelphia to be your teacher." Fletcher's voice held a warning note. "I expect you to show her proper respect." "Yes, sir," they chorused, though James was already fidgeting. Eleanor came forward, clasping Lillian's hands warmly. "Welcome, dear. I've prepared a room for you. It's not fancy, but it's clean and private. I thought you might like the one at the front of the house, where you can see the sunrise over the mountains." "That sounds lovely, thank you." Lillian felt some of her nervousness ease. The older woman's kindness was genuine, her welcome real. The first weeks were challenging. The boys had been running half wild, their education sporadic at best. Thomas could read passably, but his handwriting was nearly illegible. James struggled with his letters, growing frustrated and defiant when the words wouldn't come. And Benjamin, though bright, had barely begun his education at all. Lillian established a schoolroom in what had been Sarah's sewing room, a bright space with windows overlooking the eastern pastures. She rose early each morning, preparing lessons that would challenge the boys without overwhelming them. She taught them reading and writing, arithmetic and history, geography and natural sciences. But more than that, she taught them patience, persistence, the value of learning for its own sake. Fletcher watched from a distance, seeing his sons transform slowly under her care. Thomas began to speak more thoughtfully, considering his words before he spoke. James's anger began to channel into effort, his frustration turning to determination. And Benjamin bloomed like a flower under her attention, soaking up knowledge like the desert soaked up rain. But it wasn't just the boys who were changing. Fletcher found himself drawn to the schoolroom, finding excuses to linger near the door. He heard Lillian's voice, patient and encouraging, never harsh even when the boys tested her. He saw the way she challenged them to think, to question, to wonder. And he began to wonder himself about this woman who had come so far to teach his sons. Eleanor noticed, of course. Mothers always did. Before she left to return to her own home in town, 3 weeks after Lillian's arrival, she took her son aside. "She's a good woman, Fletcher, kind and smart. The boys adore her already." "I know, Ma. She's been a blessing for them." "For them," Eleanor repeated, studying his face. "And maybe for you too, if you let her be." Fletcher looked away, uncomfortable. "It's too soon. Sarah's only been gone 2 years. Sarah's been gone, son. She's not coming back, and she wouldn't want you to be alone forever." Eleanor touched his arm gently. "I'm not saying rush into anything. But don't close your heart so tight that something good can't find its way in." After his mother left, the ranch settled into a rhythm. Lillian taught the boys in the mornings, and in the afternoons, they did their chores. Fletcher ran the ranch with the help of his foremen and ranch hands, managing the cattle and horses that were his livelihood. In the evenings, they all gathered for supper, a family of sorts, bound by circumstance and growing affection. Spring turned to early summer. The high desert bloomed with unexpected color, wildflowers carpeting the spaces between sagebrush. Lillian had never seen anything like it, and she took to walking in the evenings, exploring the land around the ranch house. The vastness still awed her, the silence broken only by birdsong and the distant lowing of cattle. One evening in late May, Fletcher found her sitting on a flat rock overlooking a small creek, her skirts tucked around her and her hair loose around her shoulders. He'd never seen her with her hair down, and for a moment he just stood there, struck by the picture she made in the golden evening light. "I hope I'm not trespassing," she said, having heard his approach. I know the ranch is large, but I wasn't sure how far your property extended. You could walk for a day in any direction and still be on Zane land, he said, coming to stand beside her rock. And you're welcome anywhere on it. She looked up at him, shading her eyes against the sun. It's beautiful here, so different from home but beautiful in its own way. Do you miss it, Philadelphia? Sometimes. I miss the bookshops, the libraries, the theaters, she smiled. But not as much as I thought I would. There's something about this place, it gets into your blood. Fletcher sat down on the rock beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Sarah used to say that. She was from California originally, came here when her father bought land near Yerington. She said the desert taught her what it meant to be alive, to really see things. It was the first time he'd spoken of his wife directly to Lillian. She waited, sensing he needed to talk. She was a good woman, a good mother. When she died, I thought I'd die too, but the boys needed me, and the ranch needed running, and life just kept going whether I was ready or not. He picked up a small stone, turning it over in his fingers. I'm grateful you came, Lillian. The boys are different already, happier, more settled. They're wonderful children. You've done well by them, even on your own. I've done what I could, but it wasn't enough. He turned to look at her. You've given them something I couldn't. Not just learning, but hope. A future that's bigger than just this ranch. The ranch is nothing to dismiss. You've built something remarkable here. Maybe. But there's a whole world beyond these mountains, and they should know about it. They should have choices. He stood, offering her his hand. It's getting dark. We should head back. She took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in it, and something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, or the first stirring of something neither was quite ready to name. Summer deepened, and the days grew hot. Lillian adjusted the school schedule, teaching early in the morning when it was cool, then releasing the boys to their chores and afternoon rest. She helped in the kitchen, learning to cook the heartier fare that ranch work required. She learned to preserve and can, to make bread in the outdoor oven, to manage the huge meals needed to feed ranch hands and family alike. Fletcher found himself increasingly aware of her presence. The way she laughed at James's jokes, even the terrible ones. The patience she showed Benjamin when he struggled with his reading. The quiet conversations she had with Thomas, who was growing into a thoughtful young man. And more than that, he noticed the way the sunlight caught in her hair, the grace of her movements, the sound of her voice calling the boys in for lessons. It was dangerous, this noticing. He'd built walls around his heart after Sarah's death, walls that kept the pain in but also kept everything else out. Lillian was threatening those walls simply by being herself, kind and capable and utterly unaware of the effect she was having on him. In July, trouble came in the form of cattle rustlers. Fletcher and his men tracked them for 3 days, finally recovering most of the stolen herd. There was a confrontation, shots fired, and though no one was killed, Fletcher came home with a bullet graze along his ribs that he tried to hide. Lillian saw him wince as he dismounted and was at his side before he could protest. You're hurt. It's nothing. Just a scratch. Let me see. Her tone brooked no argument, and he found himself following her into the house like one of his sons caught in mischief. In the kitchen, she made him remove his shirt, and he saw her eyes widen at the blood-soaked bandage. This needs proper cleaning. Sit down. He sat, watching as she heated water, gathered clean cloths and the medical supplies they kept for such emergencies. Her hands were gentle but efficient as she cleaned the wound, her face close to his, concentration furrowing her brow. You could have been killed, she said quietly. It's part of ranching. Rustlers, rough weather accidents. It comes with the territory. That doesn't mean I have to like it. She met his eyes, and he saw genuine fear there, genuine concern. For him, The boys need you, Fletcher. They can't lose another parent. Is it just the boys who need me? The question was out before he could stop it, low and rough, her hands stilled on the bandage she was tying. No, she whispered. Not just the boys. He reached up, cupping her face with one calloused hand. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly. Lillian. We shouldn't, she said, but she didn't pull away. It's too complicated. I'm here to teach your sons not to what? Care about their father, because I think it's too late for that, for both of us. She opened her eyes, looking at him with such honesty it took his breath away. I didn't come here looking for this. I came looking for independence, for a purpose. And you found it. You've been amazing with the boys. But that doesn't mean you can't find something else too, something for yourself. He paused. Something with me. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I'm not what you need? What if I can't be what Sarah was? I'm not asking you to be Sarah. I'm asking you to be Lillian, that's all. That's everything. He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. I'm scared too. I swore I'd never feel like this again, never risk the pain of losing someone I love. But here you are, and I can't seem to help myself. She kissed him then, a gentle press of lips that felt like coming home. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, mindful of his injury, and kissed her back with all the loneliness and longing he'd been holding inside. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling, tears on her cheeks. The boys will see. The boys are out with the hands learning to mend fences. We have time. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. I want to court you properly, Lillian, the way you deserve. I know it's unusual, you living here already, but I want to do this right. I'd like that, she said softly. Very much. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Lillian had experienced before. Back east, courtship had been formal affairs, conducted in parlors under watchful eyes. Here, in the wide, open spaces of Nevada, it was different. Fletcher would ride out with her in the cool of evening, showing her the far reaches of his land. They'd talk for hours, about everything and nothing. He told her about building the ranch, about his dreams for his sons' futures. She told him about growing up the youngest of 5 daughters, about her love of learning, her decision to become a teacher despite her family's disapproval. The boys noticed, of course, though they said nothing at first. Thomas watched his father smile again, really smile, and felt something tight in his chest loosen. James caught them holding hands once and grinned so wide his face nearly split. And Benjamin, who remembered his mother only in fragments and impressions, started calling Lillian Miss Lily with such affection that it made her eyes sting. August brought scorching heat and a challenge from an unexpected quarter. A neighboring rancher, Gerald Worth, began making his interest in Lillian known. He was a widower himself, wealthy and established, and he made no secret of his intentions. When he came to call, Fletcher met him on the porch, his face carefully neutral. Worth, what can I do for you? I came to pay my respects to Miss Morrison. I understand she's an educated woman, refined. Rare qualities in these parts. Worth smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'd like to invite her to the community dance next month. You'd have to ask the lady herself, Fletcher said evenly. She makes her own decisions. Lillian appeared in the doorway, having heard the exchange. Mr. Worth, how kind of you to think of me, but I'm afraid I must decline. I've already accepted another invitation. Oh, and who might that be? Worth's tone sharpened. Mine, Fletcher said quietly. I've asked Lillian to attend the dance with me. Worth's face darkened. I see. Working fast, aren't you, Zane? Hiring a teacher and making her your mistress under the same roof. Fletcher's fists clenched, but Lillian spoke before he could. Mr. Worth, I'll ask you to leave now. And if you value your reputation in this community, you'll keep your unfounded and insulting speculations to yourself. Her voice was cold as winter ice, her posture rigid with anger. Worth looked between them, then turned on his heel and mounted his horse. "You'll regret this, both of you." "Is that a threat?" Fletcher stepped off the porch. "It's a fact. This territory doesn't look kindly on women of loose morals or men who take advantage of those in their employ." Worth spurred his horse and rode off in a cloud of dust. Lillian was shaking, whether from anger or fear Fletcher couldn't tell. He turned to her, taking her hands. "Don't listen to him. He's just angry that you turned him down." "But what if he talks? What if people believe him?" She looked up at Fletcher, worry clear in her eyes. "I won't have your reputation damaged or the boys hurt by gossip." "Then we'll give them nothing to gossip about," Fletcher said. "Lillian Morrison, will you marry me?" She stared at him. "What? I know it's fast. I know we plan to court longer. But I also know that I love you and I want you in my life. Not just as a teacher for my sons, but as my wife, as their mother if you'll have us." He squeezed her hands. "Marry me. Let's do this right by everyone's standards. Fletcher, I can't let you propose just to save my reputation." "That's not why I'm proposing. I'm proposing because I wake up every morning glad you're here, because I fall asleep thinking about you, because my boys are happy again and so am I, and it's all because of you." His voice roughened with emotion. "I'm proposing because I love you, Lillian Morrison, and I don't want to spend another day not being able to call you mine." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Is that a yes?" "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around on the porch while she laughed and cried at the same time. The boys, who'd been watching from the barn, came running, whooping and hollering. "Are you going to be our ma?" Benjamin asked, looking up at Lillian with hopeful eyes. She knelt down, gathering him close. "If you'll have me, I could never replace your mother, Benjamin, but I promise to love you all with everything I have." "We'll have you," Thomas said, speaking for all of them. "We'd be honored to have you." The wedding was planned for late September, when the worst of the summer heat had passed. Alina returned to help with preparations, crying happy tears when Fletcher told her the news. "I knew it," she said, hugging Lillian tight. "I knew you were meant for each other the moment I saw you together." The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy ones. Lillian continued teaching the boys, but now she also prepared to become the mistress of the ranch in truth. Alina taught her the household accounts, the management of supplies and staff. The ranch hands, who'd been watching the courtship with approval, began treating her with the deference due to the rancher's wife-to-be. Fletcher threw himself into finishing improvements to the house, wanting everything perfect for his new bride. He had the bedroom repainted, bought a new bed from San Francisco, added shelves for the books he knew she loved. In quieter moments, he'd find her and steal kisses, courting her properly even as wedding plans progressed. One evening, a week before the wedding, Lillian found him in the stable, checking on a mare about to foal. She leaned against the stall door, watching him work. "Fletcher," he looked up, smiling at the sight of her. "Tell me about Sarah." His smile faded, replaced by surprise. "Why?" "Because she was important to you. Because she gave you your sons. Because I want to understand the man I'm marrying, all of him, including the parts that still grieve." She came into the stall, sitting down on a hay bale. "I'm not jealous of her, if that's what you're worried about. I just want to know." Fletcher sat beside her, thinking. She was gentle, patient. She loved this land almost as much as she loved our boys. She could calm a spooked horse with just her voice, and she made the best apple pie in 3 counties. He smiled at the memory. She was afraid during her last pregnancy. She knew something wasn't right, but she wanted the baby anyway, said every life was a gift. She gave everything she had to bring Benjamin into this world. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was, and she'd like you, I think. She always said the boys needed someone who'd challenge them, make them think. That's you. He took Lillian's hand. I'll always love Sarah. She's part of me, part of my past. But you're my future, Lillian. You and the boys and whatever comes next. There's room in my heart for both of you. I know, she said softly. I just wanted to hear you say it. I'll say it as many times as you need to hear it. He kissed her gently. I love you, Lillian. My past made me who I am, but you're who I choose every day for the rest of my life. The wedding took place on a perfect September day, the sky impossibly blue above the mountains. The ceremony was held at the small church in Yerington, with half the county in attendance. Lillian wore a dress of cream silk that a leaner had helped her make, simple but elegant. Fletcher wore his best suit, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Thomas stood as his father's best man, solemn and proud. James and Benjamin were groomsmen, scrubbed clean and dressed in new clothes, fidgeting only a little during the ceremony. Lillian's attendant was a leaner, who cried through the entire service. When Fletcher said his vows, his voice was steady and sure. I, Fletcher Zane, take you, Lillian Morrison, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you all the days of my life. I promise to be faithful, to support your dreams, to make you laugh when I can and hold you when you cry. I promise to build a life with you that's worthy of the gift you've given me by saying yes. Lillian's vows were equally heartfelt. I, Lillian Morrison, take you, Fletcher Zane, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you with all my heart, to stand by your side through whatever comes. I promise to be a good wife to you and a loving mother to your sons. I promise to make this house a home, this ranch a place of joy and learning and love. I promise to choose you every day for as long as we both shall live. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Fletcher kissed her with such tenderness that there wasn't a dry eye in the church. The celebration that followed was held at the ranch, with music and dancing, food and laughter. Cowboys danced with town ladies, children ran wild, and joy filled every corner of the property. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Fletcher led Lillian onto the makeshift dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. She rested her head on his shoulder as they swayed to the music, feeling completely at peace. Happy, he murmured into her hair. Impossibly so, you. I didn't think I could be this happy again. But here I am, married to the most amazing woman I've ever met, with 3 sons who adore her almost as much as I do. Yeah, I'm happy. They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by friends and family, beginning their new life together under the vast Nevada sky. The first months of marriage were an adjustment for everyone. Lillian moved into the master bedroom, feeling strange at first sleeping in the bed Fletcher had shared with Sarah. But he made it their space, their sanctuary, and gradually it became home. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the busy springs and summers, the quieter falls and winters. She continued teaching the boys, but now she also managed the household, worked alongside Fletcher in planning and decision-making, became in truth the mistress of the ranch. The boys adapted quickly to having a mother again. Benjamin attached himself to Lillian's side, following her around like a devoted puppy. James brought her his problems and his jokes, seeking her approval and her laughter. And Thomas, old enough to remember Sarah clearly, gave Lillian perhaps the greatest gift when he came to her one evening and said, "Thank you for making Father happy again, for making all of us happy." As autumn deepened and the air grew cool, Fletcher taught Lillian to ride like a rancher's wife should. They'd go out together in the mornings, checking on cattle, riding fence lines, enjoying the beauty of the land. She proved to be a natural horsewoman, fearless and graceful in the saddle. One October morning they rode out to a high meadow Fletcher wanted to show her. The aspen trees were gold, shimmering in the breeze, and the view stretched for miles in every direction. They dismounted, and Fletcher spread a blanket on the ground, unpacking a simple lunch. "I used to come here when I needed to think," he said. "After Sarah died, I'd ride up here and just sit, trying to make sense of everything. It's peaceful. It's beautiful." Lillian leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you for sharing it with me." "I want to share everything with you." He turned to face her. "Lillian, I know we've only been married a few months, but I need you to know something. You've given me back my life. Not just happiness, but purpose beyond just surviving. You've made me remember what it's like to have dreams, to plan for a future that's about more than just getting through each day." She cupped his face in her hands. "You've given me the same thing. I came here thinking I'd find independence, a job, a purpose. I never imagined I'd find love, a family, a home. You and the boys, you're everything I didn't know I needed." They made love there in the meadow under the golden aspens, the cool air on their skin and the warm sun filtering through the leaves. It was tender and passionate, a celebration of everything they'd found together. Winter came early to Nevada that year. By November, snow was falling, blanketing the ranch in white. The cattle were brought down from the high pastures, the barn was stocked with hay, and the house was made ready for the cold months ahead. Lillian discovered she loved winter on the ranch. The work slowed, the days grew short, and the family drew closer together. She taught the boys in the warm kitchen, the stove keeping the chill at bay. In the evenings, they'd gather in the parlor, reading aloud or playing games, Fletcher carving small figures from wood while Lillian sewed. It was a peaceful time, intimate and sweet. On a particularly cold December night, Fletcher found Lillian standing at the window, looking out at the snow falling in thick flakes. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about? How much has changed in less than a year? I arrived in spring, taught through summer, married you in fall, and now it's winter and I'm so completely happy I sometimes can't believe it's real. It's real." He turned her to face him. "And it's only going to get better. Lillian, I need to ask you something." "What is it?" "The boys are wonderful and I'm grateful for them every day. But I'd like more children if you're willing. I'd like to have a baby with you to build our family together." He paused. "But only if that's what you want too. I know it's dangerous. I know what it costs Sarah. If you're not ready or if you don't want that, I'll understand." Lillian felt her eyes fill with tears. "I want that. I want everything with you, Fletcher. Children, grandchildren, a whole life together. Yes." He kissed her then, deep and loving, and when he pulled back, he was smiling. "I love you so much. I love you too, now and always." By January, Lillian knew she was pregnant. She waited to tell Fletcher until she was sure, and when she did, his joy was incandescent. He swept her up carefully, spinning her gently, laughing like a boy. The boys were told the next day, and their excitement was equally touching. They'd have a brother or sister by late summer, a new addition to their growing family. The pregnancy was easier than Sarah's had been, or so Alina told her when she came to visit in February. Lillian bloomed with health, teaching the boys until she grew too tired, then resting in the afternoons while Fletcher fretted like a nervous hen. The boys were protective, jumping to help with anything heavy or difficult, treating her like precious china. Spring came again, the second since Lillian had arrived in Nevada. She stood on the porch one morning, watching the snow melt, the green beginning to show through. Fletcher came to stand beside her, taking her hand. "A year ago today you arrived in Yerington," he said quietly. "I remember standing at the general store, wondering what kind of woman would come all this way to teach 3 wild boys. I never imagined you'd end up teaching me so much more." She looked up at him, curious. "What did I teach you?" You taught me that love doesn't have limits. That opening your heart again doesn't mean betraying the past. You taught me that it's okay to be happy, to want things, to dream. He kissed her forehead gently. You taught me about love, Lillian. Real, deep, everyday love that builds a life worth living. That's what you asked me to do, she said softly, remembering. By winter, you'd ask me to teach you about love. And you did. You're still teaching me every day. His hand settled on her growing belly. You've given me more than I ever hoped to have. The boys are thriving, the ranch is prospering, and soon we'll have a new baby. Everything good in my life right now, it's because of you. We gave it to each other, she corrected. You taught me about courage, about building something lasting. About what it means to be part of a family, to belong somewhere completely. We taught each other, Fletcher. That's what love is. Summer arrived hot and dry, and Lillian grew large with the baby. The doctor from Yerington came to check on her regularly, pronouncing everything normal and healthy. Fletcher refused to leave her side as her time drew near, conducting ranch business from the house, driving everyone half crazy with his worrying. In late August, on a night when the heat finally broke and cool air swept down from the mountains, Lillian's labor began. Eleanor had come to help, and she sent Fletcher out with the boys while she and the doctor attended Lillian. Fletcher paced the yard like a caged animal, the boys sitting on the porch steps, equally nervous. "Pa," Thomas said finally, "she's going to be fine, she's strong." "I know, son. But I can't help worrying. I lost your mother this way, I can't lose Lillian too." "You won't," James said with the confidence of youth. "Miss Lillian is tough. She'll be fine, and so will the baby." Hours passed, feeling like days. Finally, as dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, they heard it. A baby's cry, strong and healthy. Fletcher was on his feet instantly, the boys right behind him. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, smiling. "You have a son, Fletcher. A healthy, beautiful boy. And Lillian is fine, tired but fine. Come meet your son." Fletcher rushed inside, the boys crowding after him. Lillian lay in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. She looked up as Fletcher entered, her smile worth more than all the gold in California. "Meet your son," she said softly. Fletcher took the baby carefully, marveling at the tiny face, the perfect fingers, the downy dark hair. "He's perfect. You're perfect. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you for this, for him, for everything." The boys crowded around to see their new brother, cooing and arguing gently over who he looked like. Finally, Thomas asked, "What are we going to name him?" Fletcher looked at Lillian. "We talked about names. I thought if you're agreeable we could name him Samuel after your father." Samuel Fletcher Zane. Lillian's eyes filled with tears. Her father had died 2 years ago, never knowing she'd found happiness in the Wild West. "That's perfect. Hello, Samuel. Welcome to the family." The christening was held in October when Lillian had recovered and the baby was thriving. The same church, the same community that had celebrated their wedding now celebrated the arrival of Samuel Zane. Fletcher stood with his wife and all 4 of his sons, feeling a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. Afterward, at the ranch, with friends and family celebrating around them, Fletcher pulled Lillian aside for a moment. They stood on the porch, watching the party, Samuel sleeping peacefully in Lillian's arms. "You ever regret it?" Fletcher asked quietly. "Giving up your independence, your teaching, all the things you came here for?" "I didn't give them up. I found different versions of them." She leaned against him. "I have independence here, Fletcher. The freedom to be myself, to make decisions, to have a voice in everything we do. I still teach, just my own children now instead of students, and I found so much more than I came looking for." "Like what?" "Love, family, purpose. A home that's really mine. Dreams I didn't know I could have." She looked up at him. When I stepped off that stage in Yerington, I was running from something. A life that didn't fit, expectations I couldn't meet. I thought I was running toward independence, but I was really running toward this, toward you. I'm glad you ran in our direction." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Lillian Zane, more than I have words to say. I love you too, now and always." The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under Fletcher's careful management and Lillian's wise counsel. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility on the ranch, showing a natural talent for managing cattle and men. James discovered a love for horses, training them with patience and skill. And Benjamin, brilliant and curious, devoured every book Lillian could find for him, dreaming of university someday. Samuel grew from a baby into a toddler, then a little boy, with his mother's quick mind and his father's steady nature. Lillian continued teaching all the boys at home, expanding their schoolroom to accommodate their growing needs and Samuel's early education. 2 years after Samuel's birth, Lillian gave Fletcher a daughter, Rose Zane, named for Fletcher's mother. The little girl had auburn hair like her mother and gray eyes like her father, and she wrapped the entire family around her tiny fingers from the moment she was born. The boys doted on their baby sister, and Samuel appointed himself her protector, following her everywhere as she learned to walk and talk. Fletcher and Lillian's love deepened with each passing year. They worked side by side, building not just a ranch but a legacy. They added to the house, expanding it to accommodate their growing family. They invested in better breeding stock, improved their water systems, built a real schoolhouse on the property that other ranch families began sending their children to, with Lillian teaching when she could and hiring other teachers when she couldn't. On their 5th anniversary, Fletcher took Lillian back to the meadow where they'd first made love. It was autumn again, the aspens gold as they'd been that day. They spread a blanket, unpacked a picnic, and sat together in the peaceful beauty. 5 years, Lillian mused. It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Best 5 years of my life, Fletcher said. Well, except for the sleepless nights when Samuel was a baby, and the time Rose got into the flour and covered the entire kitchen, and when James broke his arm falling off that horse. Lillian laughed. So what you're saying is it's been perfectly imperfect. Exactly. Real, messy, wonderful. He pulled her close. I wouldn't change a single thing, neither would I. She kissed him long and sweet. Here's to the next 5 years and the 5 after that. And all the years we have together. All the years, he agreed. Forever if I get my way. When Rose was 3 and Samuel 5, Lillian discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder and the doctor advised it should probably be her last. Fletcher was beside himself with worry, but Lillian remained calm, trusting her body and the experienced midwife who delivered Rose. In the spring of 1885, 7 years after Lillian had first arrived in Yerington, she gave birth to twin boys, Daniel and David Zane. The births were difficult but successful, and when Fletcher saw his wife with a baby in each arm, both healthy and crying lustily, he fell to his knees beside the bed and wept with relief and joy. 7 children, Lillian said, laughing through her own tears. We have 7 children, Fletcher Zane. What have we done? Made a beautiful, chaotic, perfect family, he said, kissing her forehead. That's what we've done. Thomas was 18 now, a man grown, already talking about starting his own ranch someday. James, at 16, was working with horses professionally, earning money breaking and training for other ranchers. Benjamin, at 14, had been offered a scholarship to a school in San Francisco, his brilliant mind recognized by a visiting professor. Samuel was 7, Rose was 5, And now the twins made 7 children in total. The house was full of noise and life, laughter and occasional tears, learning and growing and living. Lillian taught when she could, managed the household with Aliner's help, raised her children with love and firm guidance. Fletcher ran the ranch with Thomas's increasing assistance, built a legacy he could be proud of, and loved his wife more with each passing day. One evening, when the twins were about 6 months old and finally sleeping through the night, Fletcher and Lillian sat on the porch together. The older children were settled, the babies were sleeping, and for a rare moment, they had peace and quiet. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Lillian asked. "When you picked me up from the stage, I said a lot of things. Which part? You said the boys needed what you couldn't give them, that they needed proper schooling, proper manners, a woman's influence." "I remember. I was right, too. They needed you. But what you didn't say, what maybe you didn't know yet, was that you needed me too, and I needed you." She took his hand. "We saved each other, Fletcher. I gave you back your joy, your hope, but you gave me a place to belong, a purpose beyond just surviving. You gave me love when I didn't even know I was looking for it." Fletcher was quiet for a moment, then said, "That day in winter when I asked you to teach me about love. Do you remember? Of course. It was the day everything changed. You taught me that love isn't something you learn once and you're done. It's something you practice every day, in the big moments and the small ones, in the way you make coffee in the morning because you know I like it strong, in the way I brush your hair at night when you're too tired to do it yourself, in raising children together, building a life together, choosing each other over and over again." "That's beautiful," Lillian said softly. "It's true. You taught me that love is active, not passive. That it grows and changes and deepens if you tend it like you'd tend a garden or a herd or anything else worth keeping." He turned to face her. "And I want to keep you forever, Lillian Zane. I want to grow old with you, watch our grandchildren be born, build a legacy that lasts for generations. I want every day for the rest of my life to start and end with you. You have me," she promised, "forever, through everything. I'm yours and you're mine, and nothing will ever change that." They sat together as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The land stretched out before them, the ranch they'd built together, the family they'd created. Inside the house, their children slept safely, the future they'd made together already taking shape. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges, joys and sorrows. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from the next county over and started his own spread with Fletcher's help and blessing. James opened a horse training business that became renowned throughout Nevada. Benjamin went to university in San Francisco, studying law, writing home faithfully about his adventures in the city. Samuel grew into a thoughtful boy who loved both ranching and learning, splitting his time between helping his father and studying with his mother. Rose became a skilled rider and a talented artist, filling the house with drawings and paintings of the ranch and the family. The twins, Daniel and David, were inseparable, getting into mischief together, but also fiercely protective of each other and their family. Fletcher's mother, Aliner, lived long enough to see all her grandchildren born, passing peacefully in her sleep when the twins were 5. Her death was a sorrow, but also a relief, as her last years had been happy ones, surrounded by family and love. She was buried on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains she'd loved. By the time their 10th anniversary arrived, Fletcher and Lillian were established pillars of the community. The school Lillian had started on the ranch now served dozens of children from neighboring ranches. Fletcher sat on the county board, helping make decisions about water rights and land use. Together, they'd built something that mattered, something that would last. On their anniversary, they left the children with Thomas and his wife and took a trip to San Francisco. It was Lillian's first time back to a real city since leaving Philadelphia, and Fletcher's first time seeing the ocean. They walked along the waterfront, ate in fancy restaurants, visited Benjamin at his university. They made love in a real hotel, with no children to wake them, laughing at the luxury of privacy and quiet. On their last night in the city, standing on the balcony of their hotel room looking out at the lights of San Francisco, Fletcher pulled Lillian close. Happy, deliriously. This has been wonderful, but I'm ready to go home. To the noise and the chaos and the children, to our life. Our real, beautiful, chaotic life. She turned in his arms. I loved seeing the city again, but it's not home anymore. Home is that ranch in Nevada with 7 children and 100 head of cattle and more work than we can possibly do in a day. Home is you. Home is us, Fletcher corrected. Together. Always together. They returned to the ranch renewed and refreshed, ready to plunge back into the beautiful chaos of their lives. The children swarmed them the moment they arrived, all talking at once, showing them things they'd made or learned while their parents were away. The dogs barked, the horses whinnied, and the whole ranch seemed to welcome them home. That night, after the children were finally settled and the house was quiet, Fletcher and Lillian lay in bed together, exhausted and happy. 10 years, Fletcher mused. 10 years since I married the best decision I ever made. I was a person, not a decision, Lillian teased. The best person I ever met, and the best decision was to marry you. He pulled her closer. I love you, Lillian. More now than I did 10 years ago, more than I did yesterday. I love you more every single day. I love you too, always, she yawned, snuggling into his warmth. Forever and always. More years passed, and the children continued to grow. Samuel decided he wanted to be a veterinarian, fascinated by animal medicine and care. Rose talked of becoming a teacher like her mother, or maybe an artist. The twins, at 10, were still figuring out who they wanted to be, but they were bright and curious and full of potential. Fletcher and Lillian's hair began to show gray, their faces lined with laughter and life. But their love remained strong, a constant in a changing world. They still rode out together when they could, still talked late into the night, still chose each other every single day. When Fletcher was 47 and Lillian 39, they became grandparents for the first time. Thomas and his wife had a son, Fletcher Thomas Zane, and the whole family celebrated the arrival of a new generation. Holding his grandson, Fletcher looked at Lillian across the room, surrounded by their children, and felt a contentment so profound, it was almost overwhelming. That night back at home, he pulled her into his arms. We did it, he said softly. We built a family, a legacy. We took the ruins of what I had and made something beautiful. We did it together, Lillian reminded him. Everything good we have, we made it together. I know. And I'm grateful every day. For that stage that brought you here, for the courage that made you stay, for the love that changed everything. He kissed her gently. You're still teaching me, you know, about love, about life, about what really matters. And what's that? She asked, though she knew the answer. Family, love, building something that lasts, making every day count. He rested his forehead against hers. You, us, this life we've made, that's what matters. As the new century approached, bringing changes and challenges neither of them could have imagined when they first met, Fletcher and Lillian Zane remained constant. Their love was a foundation, strong and sure, holding up everything they'd built together. The ranch prospered across generations. Their children went out into the world to make their own marks, and grandchildren arrived one by one to fill the house with new laughter. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. All 7 children came home, some bringing spouses and children of their own. The house was full to bursting, exactly as Lillian loved it. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, stories and memories shared. As evening fell and the party continued around them, Fletcher led Lillian out to the porch, needing a moment of quiet with his wife. They stood together, his arm around her waist, looking out at the land they'd built a life on. 20 years, Lillian said softly. Can you believe it? Best 20 years of my life. Well, except for all the times before I met you, he grinned. Those were pretty terrible in comparison, she laughed, leaning into him. You hired me to teach your sons. I was supposed to give them education, manners, refinement. You gave them all that and more. You gave them a mother's love, a sense of possibility, dreams they could reach for. He turned to face her. And you gave me everything. Hope, love, a future I didn't think I'd have. You taught me what I asked you to teach me. About love, he confirmed. About how it heals and grows and transforms everything it touches. About how it's not a feeling but a choice, made every day in 1,000 small ways. About how it's the only thing that really matters when everything else falls away. Lillian felt tears on her cheeks. You taught me too. About courage, about building something lasting, about family and home and belonging. We taught each other, Fletcher. That's what these 20 years have been. A long, beautiful lesson in how to love. Inside, someone started playing the piano and their children's voices rose in song. Fletcher held out his hand to Lillian. Dance with me, always. They danced on the porch under the stars, the same stars that had witnessed their wedding 20 years ago, the same stars that would shine on their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They danced to the music of family and love, of a life well lived and a future full of promise. When the song ended, Fletcher kissed his wife softly. Here's to the next 20 years and all the years after that. To growing old together, to watching our family grow, to loving each other until our last breath and beyond. To love, Lillian agreed. To us, to everything we've built and everything yet to come. As they stood together on the porch of their ranch in Yerington, Nevada, surrounded by family and wrapped in love, Fletcher and Lillian Zane knew they'd found something rare and precious. They'd found not just love but partnership, not just marriage but unity. They'd built a life together that would echo through generations, a legacy of love that would outlast them both. The Wild West was changing around them, becoming tamer, more civilized. But their love remained as wild and free as it had been from the beginning, untamed by time or circumstance. It was a love born of honest need and genuine respect, nurtured through countless small moments and tested by life's inevitable challenges. And it was a love that would last, strong and true, until the end of their days and beyond. Years later, when they were old and gray, their children grown and scattered but still close, their grandchildren becoming parents themselves, Fletcher and Lillian would still sit together on that porch. They'd hold hands and watch the sunset, remembering that spring day when a woman from Philadelphia stepped off a stage in Nevada and changed everything. They'd remember the summer of learning and growing closer, the autumn wedding that joined their lives, the winter when Fletcher finally admitted he needed more than just a teacher for his sons. He needed someone to teach him about love, and Lillian had taught him well. She'd taught him with her patience and her passion, with her strength and her tenderness, with her unwavering presence and her constant choice to stay, to love, to build a life together. She'd taught him that love wasn't something you fell into once and were done. It was something you built, day by day, year by year, choice by choice. In return, he taught her about belonging, about home, about being loved not for what she could do but for who she was. He taught her that strength came in many forms, that vulnerability could be brave, that opening your heart was the greatest risk and the greatest reward. Together, they'd built something beautiful. A family, a ranch, a legacy, a love that would be remembered and retold for generations. The teacher from the east and the rancher from the west, who found each other in the vast Nevada desert and created something neither could have imagined alone. When Fletcher passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Lillian was beside him, holding his hand as she'd held it for more than 40 years. His last words were, "I love you," spoken with the same sincerity as the first time he'd said them. She stayed with him for a long time, saying goodbye to the love of her life, the partner of her heart, the man who'd given her everything. But she didn't grieve alone. Their 7 children gathered, along with their spouses and children and grandchildren. The house was full again, just as it had always been meant to be full. They shared stories and memories, laughter and tears, celebrating a life well lived and a love that had transformed them all. Lillian lived 3 more years, long enough to see another generation of Zanes born, long enough to tell her story to grandchildren and great-grandchildren who listened with wide eyes. She told them about the brave decision to leave everything she knew, about the stage ride to Yerington, about meeting a rancher with 3 wild boys who needed a teacher. She told them about falling in love in the desert, about building a life from scratch, about learning what really mattered. She told them that love was a choice and a gift, a challenge and a comfort, the hardest work and the greatest joy she'd ever known. And she told them to choose it always, if they were blessed enough to find it. When Lillian passed, also peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by family and wrapped in the quilt she'd made with a leaner for her wedding, she went with a smile on her face. Her last thought was of Fletcher, waiting for her, ready to dance with her again under stars that never faded. They were buried side by side on the hillside overlooking the ranch, near a leaner, with a view of the mountains and the valley they'd loved. The stone reads simply, "Fletcher Zane, beloved husband, father, grandfather Lillian Morrison Zane, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher together always, and they were together, in memory and legacy, in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their love forward into the future." The ranch continued, passed down through generations, a testament to what 2 people could build when they chose love, day after day, year after year. The story of the rancher who hired a woman to teach his sons, and by winter had asked her to teach him about love, became a family legend. It was told and retold, embellished and cherished, a reminder that love could come when you least expected it, that taking a chance could change everything, that the best things in life were worth the risk. And somewhere in the heart of every Zane who came after, lived the truth Fletcher and Lillian had learned together. That love was not just a feeling but a practice, not just a moment but a lifetime, not just a gift but a choice. A choice to stay, to grow, to build something beautiful together. A choice they'd made every day of their lives, creating a legacy that would last long after they were gone. The Wild West changed and modernized, but the story remained. A testament to love, to courage, to the transformative power of 2 hearts choosing each other against all odds. And in Yerington, Nevada, on a ranch that still bore the Zane name, that love lived on, as wild and free and true as the land that had witnessed its beginning.